So I'm here with Neal Carter, a new buddy, a gym buddy, and also a soccer player. So we're going to talk about that here in a minute. And also your day job as a professional in the events planning and hospitality space. And so you're going to teach me everything I don't know about planning conferences, which is a big thing in my industry. So before we get into it though, Neal Carter, what's going on, man? How are you?
Doing very well, man. Thank you for having me on. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah.
This is it's a great honor to be on. Thank you.
Oh, I don't know about it being an honor, but I'll take it from you, man. So you are a recent transplant to Texas, so I want to welcome you to Texas. How long ago did you get here? Because I know you grew up in Florida.
Yep, got here from South Florida in August. Born and raised in Miami, Florida. Go Canes.
Go Canes.
Born and raised in Miami, Florida, and came here in August. Absolutely love it here. Love the weather. Yes, it's hot here, but
yeah, compare to me the Florida heat to the Texas heat, because I feel like Texas is pretty humid, but I realize Florida's on a completely different level, right?
Half the humidity of Florida.
Okay.
And so because of that, because it's half the humidity, it's not, in my opinion, it's not nearly as bad, because when I go out to walk the dog, I'm not sweating immediately. In Miami, I step outside at 8:30 p.m. for 2 minutes, and I needed to go take another shower.
Yeah, that's wild. That happens every once in a while in Texas, where you're like, why did I even just take a shower? Yeah. Like, that was a waste of a shower.
Yep.
But, that's the nature of living in a fairly somewhat tropical climate with a lot of humidity and heat. To me, it beats the frigid cold of like the Northeast most of the year. People can have that. I'm not interested in that at all. But so Neal, I know the bulk of the conversation today will be kind of filling in the gaps of what it's like to plan an event, especially hotel-style conferences. Those are really big in the insurance industry, which I operate. And that's where I think a lot of people that follow my show will ultimately be interested in, is like, what's the economics of it? What is it like to plan that?
Absolutely.
What are logistics like? All those things. Because I've always wondered that myself. Well, why don't we start more of your backstory? So we got a little bit about where you're from in Florida. Kind of give me the 101 of Neal Carter. Grow up, family life, interests as a kid, and then let's lead into soccer after that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, born and raised in Miami, Florida. Grew up there to two Jamaican parents, amazing parents. I had a phenomenal upbringing.
Awesome.
Grew up in a loving household. God couldn't have put me in a better situation. Our family it was great. We didn't have much, but definitely had love and definitely had everything we needed.
Very
and then
cool.
As things started to thrive for my parents, as my parents started to thrive professionally, they were both highly educated coming over from Jamaica. We then ended up moving to the Weston area, which is just a little north of Miami, about 40 minutes north of Miami. And it's a upper middle class suburb. And so lived there. Grew up playing. My dad got me into soccer.
Yeah, I was going to say, it had to be dad. Dad introduced you to soccer then? Did he play himself?
He played, Jamaican boys. That's what they play. And so he introduced me to soccer, and I was hooked. He showed me a clip of Paul Ince, which was, ironically enough, Paul Ince played for Manchester United, and he loved Paul Ince. My dad was a diehard Arsenal fan. So he puts me on to Paul Ince. I immediately become a Man U fan. And then he's like, oh, what did I do?
Created a in-house rivalry,
exactly.
Right? So when Manchester United was playing Arsenal, was Dad still an Arsenal fan, or is it Paul
100%.
Okay.
He just really liked Paul Ince, and that was it. But then because of that, he put me on to Manchester United.
Awesome.
And
you got to be a fan kind of similar to me in the heyday of Manchester United with Beckham and Cantona, and Paul Scholes and Ryan Giggs. I mean, the list is a mile long.
Nicky Butt, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, all
Alex
those guys.
Ferguson, obviously. What a freaking era of success that they had. I have some buddies that are still Man U fans today, and it's kind of like
me,
it's been this. It's been a disappointing run here recently.
We were spoiled growing up, man.
Dude, it's insane how good. I mean, they're like the Yankees, or recent years maybe the Patriots in the NFL, like this dynasty that they created, which nowadays in soccer is incredibly difficult to do because of the money that's poured into European leagues. So you grew up watching Paul Ince. Did you want to idolize? He was a forward, right? So did you want to be like Paul Ince? Did you shape your game like his? So
he was my gateway into soccer, but then I quickly found other guys that I idolized much more. Paul Gascoigne, Ruud Gullit with Netherlands, just guys like that. And probably my favorite player from a technical standpoint of all time is Ronaldinho Gaucho.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Ronaldinho. Yeah. He's
the ball skill
It's amazing. Like, I think some people, when they see like what Ronaldinho looks like now, he's a little chubby now because he's kind of he's up there in age, and you can't imagine. He also was incredibly fast. Like, it wasn't just his ball skill, but he could do it at speed.
Yeah.
And you look at him and you go, what? Like, that guy was that quick and good? Yeah, at one point when he was a little bit more fit, he was. I mean, he's easily up there in the conversation for one of the best players of all time. No doubt.
My favorite player of all time, up until probably about 5 or 6 years ago, was Pele, you know, the late great Pele, you know, all-time leading goal scorer in world history, which people don't really speak of much. They don't understand. Like, they'll speak of, Cristiano Ronaldo's goals and Messi's goals and say, oh, you know, this is the most in a career. But actually, it's not. If you go back and look, Pele had over 2,000 goals in his career.
Yeah. So, and is there some skepticism about like some of these, like the early days and the counting of the goals? Because I mean, to get to 2,000 goals is an extraordinary pace, right? That's 100 goals a year for 20 years, right? That's a lot of goals. So I don't know what level he was playing at certain times or how good the scorekeeping was, but I think regardless, he's easily the highest scoring player of all time. And God rest his soul, I know he recently passed away. So when did you discover though that you were good? I'm curious, was there a moment like in maybe your high school or junior high where you were kind of a standout player? And we're leading into the fact that you play professional soccer, so we're going to touch on that. But when did you know that, like, hey, I'm pretty good at this?
So funny thing, goodness, in middle school, I was actually terrible.
Okay.
For 6th grade, I'll never forget it. I wasn't that great, and you know, kids tease and, you know, that are in the same sport when you're not as good.
Yeah.
And I was determined to be better. I didn't know how much better I would be, but I was determined to be better. So I would get to the field an hour before everyone when we were going to play pickup games. I would stay an hour after. My brother used to get mad because we would ride to the field together and then ride home together, and he would have to wait for me.
Just waiting there for
me to finish juggling or finish taking shots.
He's like, Neal, come on, man, what's going on?
Exactly. And then slowly I just started to get better to the point to where by 7th, 8th grade. It was rather quick from that point, 7th, 8th grade, to where I was excelling.
Okay.
And I felt like I was progressing at a pace to where...
Well, do you think it was directly attributable to the amount of work that you put in, probably? I mean,
100%.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure your body was developing over time, speed and power and all those things, but the work ethic seems to be the thing that like connected you or catapulted you, if you will.
I was all work.
Okay.
I will go out on a limb and say I had no God-given talent for soccer. No, I truly believe that.
Okay.
I didn't get things as naturally as the players that we're talking about. You know, you see Ronaldinho Gaucho with the ball. I don't know how he's doing that. I didn't, I was 1 or 2 cuts, few step overs, pass the ball or shoot, and that's really it. And that took years of just development,
Well, I think honestly, that's, I just posted a clip this morning from Kareem Cade, the episode I just released, and he talks about, you can go to different places, hey, maybe I'm changing jobs. That was the context he was using this analogy in, but he's like, if you don't work on you, you're the same you anywhere else unless you start working on you. And I saw that same exact thing in my soccer career, we'll move on from soccer here in a second, but when I was a sophomore, I made varsity. I think I've told this story before, but I made varsity and then I didn't play. And so my coach sat me down probably 5 or 6 games in the seasons like, Spencer, I need you on JV. And I'm like, JV? Like I go back down to JV? It was like this. I was broken as a sophomore. I thought I was just on the cusp of doing good things. And then so I remember leaving there being kind of upset and emotional, angry as a teenager would be and driving home and decided, you know what? Like I don't want that to be where it stops. And so same thing as you, I was a little later of a bloomer. After practice, an extra hour. Go home and do another hour of practice. Juggling, agility, anything that I knew that was a deficiency in my game, I worked on. Next season, captain of the varsity team. The next season, I was like, a midfield MVP, and I played college and as a captain. All of that, there was like this point in time where I had 1 or 2 ways I could go, which was kind of give up and just kind of casually go through the motions or double down on effort. I chose the double down on effort, and the trajectory went up from there. I saw players, and I'm sure you experienced this, and this happens in every aspect of our life, naturally gifted early on, don't put in the work. Here you are, slowly but surely, now you're excelling beyond them, and they stop or they quit or something else happens. So I'm sure you experienced that yourself.
So many times. Goodness, one of the main kids that would pick on me that changed my mindset as to how I would train, that was him. He got to a certain level, dropped off completely, forgot about the sport, never got into it again. Still hasn't played to this day. You know, he won't play pickup or anything like that. And then I have other friends. Goodness, one of my best friends growing up, he could have gone and played anywhere, but he just lost interest later on in life.
Yeah.
You want to talk about technical ball skill. He was on another level, and I would actually have him try to show me how his thought process and how he goes about dribbling the way that he dribbles. And we would be in his garage, and he would be showing me. And I couldn't make
some
that
of it's
mind-body
innate,
connection.
right? Yeah, no, some of it's innate.
Like connection.
There's something about the way people, like some players shape their body, or the way that they like can see things visually in their field of vision that you just don't pick up on or see 2 or 3 steps ahead. That's what people look at Messi and the ability to control the ball and how good he is at dribbling. I think the biggest gift that Messi has is he's playing at a speed slightly faster than anybody else, mentally more than anything.
Yeah, he's 3-4 steps ahead. He's seeing the plays that are the way that they're evolving before it's even happening.
Yeah.
It's a God-given ability that I surely was not.
Well,
given.
I wasn't gifted as either, but I did name my dog Messi, so there's that. I've got a dog named Messi. So why don't we do this? I want to briefly touch on your pro career, because that's a very unique thing, and I know you've downplayed what level you played at or all that stuff. But you left Barry University, which is where you played soccer. Were you ultimately drafted? Where was MLS at this time? Like, talk to me about the dynamics of entering into the pro level.
Yeah. So went and then did a tryout with Seattle when, they were still A-League.
Yeah.
And then ended up playing there, got drafted really late, played there for 2 years, didn't make much money, it was A-League. And then went to Portland, played there for a year.
They were also in the A-League at the time, too.
As well.
A lot of people that maybe are current fans of MLS and know Portland and Seattle's very successful MLS franchises started out in the A-League prior to even entering the MLS, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That now those are some of the top fan bases and have great stadiums and very successful, but they didn't start from scratch. They had a long history prior to of the lower levels. So A-League, for anybody that doesn't know, I guess would have been like kind of like the second tier, right?
Yeah, like second tier, not premiership, but you could say first division, so to speak, if we're speaking in English premiership terms.
No, we're going to confuse a lot of the non-soccer people. But so obviously you got to play a couple years, which is I'm sure was an amazing experience. And you said there wasn't a lot of money in it, but there wasn't a lot of money in soccer at that time. So after you decided to put up or hang up the boots, as they say, where'd you like figure out what you're going to do next? Like what did your career look like post soccer?
Yeah, so came home and then back to Miami, and then ended up working for a company you may have heard of called Abercrombie & Fitch.
Yeah, definitely heard of Abercrombie & Fitch.
Started out there as a manager in training and worked my way up to general manager, and that's where one day I ended up meeting my soon-to-be friend and director of sales, a good friend of mine, Brian. And we hit it off immediately. And he asked me, he said, Eddie, have you ever thought about becoming a hotel sales manager? I had no clue what that was. And he said, you have the personality for it. I'd love to talk to you about that. I have a position open. And I go to interview with him. And he's like, do you know what a hotel sales manager is? And at that point, I'd done my research.
You did some research, okay.
It's like, yes. And then I explained it to him. And then he ended up hiring me and took 4 months out of a work year to teach me the business. So essentially gave me a hospitality degree in 4 months. Nobody does that.
Because you didn't study. You said you studied marketing in college. I think we skipped over that. But so what was it like? Did you just think you had the right persona for it, or were you personable? Why did he think, I think Neal would be very good at this job?
I think it was personality and energy.
Okay.
And I'm a positive person, and he saw that and thought, hey, I could mold this guy into something useful. So I think. Well,
were you able to pick it up in that 4 months? Where you feel like you were able to then hit the ground running after that? Okay,
quickly.
So what does a hotel sales manager do? Because we go check in at a hotel every once in a while. You meet the hotel sales manager, or at least the manager of the property.
Yeah.
But this was maybe a slightly different role. So the people that don't know, what was your job responsibility?
Right. So you have you have general managers. You may have just a manager on duty at a hotel, but what a sales manager does is they book business at the hotel regarding conferences and events. So they get association groups, government groups, corporations, and then even it could be anything from entertainment groups like family reunions and things like that, and religious groups to book their meetings and events at a hotel.
Okay.
And so, with the meeting space and also the sleeping rooms as well. So.
Okay, so were you focused more on the event space at the time? Because I know that's more of what you do now, but did you have a knack for that? Did you gravitate towards more of that than just the property itself? Like, tell me about you evolving, because you've had a 15-year career, and we're probably skipping ahead a little bit in the timeline.
No, absolutely.
But the progression of a job like that, what does it look like?
Yeah, so when I first started, I worked for the George Washington University Inn and the One Washington Circle Hotel in D.C.
Okay.
And it was my job to go ahead and meet with different organizations and get them to book their events at the hotel. So what I mean by that is I was all about the sleeping rooms. Okay. That's how I made my money, my commission, and and bonuses. So I was all about sleeping rooms, and then the event aspect of it was sort of handled by an events manager or the catering manager, so to speak. And then things started to evolve as my career progressed. When I moved back down to South Florida, I ended up meeting one of my mentors, Barry Moskowitz, phenomenal guy, changed my life. He ended up hiring me to work at the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. And that was one of the coolest, most rewarding positions I've ever been in. Such a great place to work.
Tell me about it.
You work with all amazing people. Everybody there is smart. Everybody there is knowledgeable, and they truly, and every organization says, "Oh, well, we treat you like family." They actually do. Okay. And you don't want to leave. There's a reason why when I got there, the lowest tenured person had been there like 12 years.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So yeah, and the reason for that is because of how well they treat everyone that works there. Every day is something new, because not only because it's Miami, but it's also the industry we're in. Barry has a very thick Boston accent. He'd say, "Mr. Carter, grab your blazer, let's go." And then next thing I'm like, "Where are we going?" Next thing I know, we're pulling up to at the time was the American Airlines Arena, where the Miami Heat play. And, we see Pat Riley, we're seeing Dwayne Wade, we're seeing all these guys, and I'm getting to meet these guys, Mickey Aronson, the owner of the Heat. And it's just like, wait, I was just sitting at my desk 20 minutes ago. Yeah. Now I'm here meeting Pat Riley, and just different things like that. That's cool. Being able to contribute on Super Bowl bids. Things like that I would never thought that I would be a part of in my life.
Did you got to work on the Super Bowl bid? I think you were telling me that earlier. Like, that's a 5-year kind of runway to plan, right?
Right, yeah.
So what did you do? What was your role on one of those bids? Pareto Health is the manager of the largest employee benefits group captive in the United States. And it's also now the main sponsor of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast. I chose to partner with Pareto Health for 3 main reasons. Number 1, their dedication to improving the world of health benefits. Number 2, their mission to reduce volatility and to make self-funding simple for mid-sized employers. And number 3, the strength and scale of their program. With over 2,300 member groups and more than $1 billion of stop-loss premium under management, Pareto Health is the most robust solution of its kind in the country, period. Stay tuned for more information, because I'm sure I'll be featuring them on an episode of the podcast very soon. Visit Pareto Health at paretohealth.com or follow them on LinkedIn to stay up to date on the latest news and developments.
I essentially was in a supporting role with Barry, and as he navigated that process, because the crazy thing was it was the last, I think it was like 12 years, every Super Bowl that was in Miami, he was personally responsible for getting them there. Jeez.
Okay.
So that process, the RFP for that is about that thick.
Well, you're speaking my language now, RFP, man.
Yeah.
So and that RFP is that thick. So tell me a little bit about the economics of a Super Bowl bid. Are we talking in the hundreds of millions of dollars?
Hundreds of millions of dollars. And then it's, when you're working for a Convention and Visitors Bureau, it is a situation where you're now selling a destination and not just a hotel.
Okay.
So I had to go from thinking, okay, hey, I'm selling this property or that property, to, oh no, wait, I represent 230 properties all throughout Miami-Dade County.
Okay.
However, it's different because now Super Bowl is here, but you have to get all of these hotels to commit to offering a certain amount of rooms for the Super Bowl in order to win the business.
Yeah.
So you're then saying, hey, listen, Fontainebleau, I need you to give me, 800 rooms during Super Bowl week, and the rate needs to be $1,100, per night. Well, then they're like, no, I don't want to do that, because come closer to the Super Bowl, I could sell that same room for $6,000 a night.
Yeah.
But I need you to play ball in order for us to win this.
Yeah.
So you can even get
there's got to be
money.
some give and take, right? Because it's like, if you don't contribute, you might actually prevent us from getting this in the first place. And there goes your $6,000 a night, right? So you're trying to find where that sweet spot is in bulk to help you win the bid. So is it kind of like herding cats, getting all these different people to ultimately, did you guys win the bid? I don't know.
Won the bid.
What year was this? Was it in Miami?
Oh, goodness. It was the 100th year anniversary of the NFL. What was it? Oh, goodness.
Don't worry. Yeah,
exactly right now.
Yeah, no worries. I'll have people look it up. They're probably, some people right now are Googling.
Miami's last Super Bowl.
Miami's last Super Bowl. Okay, so we won the bid. Like, did you get to go actually enjoy and experience it?
I did not.
You didn't? So you had to work it or what?
Yeah. No. I just didnn't get to.
All that work. But I mean, you contributed to having it there, and I'm sure it's a huge boon to the economy. I'm sure it went off without a hitch and all that stuff. That's got to be fun and nerve-wracking simultaneously for something that's a once in a lifetime almost bid. So how long did you work at the Miami Bureau doing more of that? That's
about
world?
6 years total.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 years total. Yeah, and you see everything from events that take maybe 2-3 months to put together. They're small.
Yeah.
To events that take 5 or 6 years.
Well, let's talk about that. I want to kind of pull it into my industry for a little bit, because you don't have to know anything about insurance, but I want to talk about what it looks like to put together a conference. I just came from a great conference a couple weeks ago in Miami, of all places, and the Biltmore. It's was the U-Powered Symposium that Emma Fox and David Contorno put on, and it was amazing. I always tell people about it. I'm not, I have no affiliation. I'm not remunerated from them, but it was a great conference. But we have things like SIA and CIAB and Benefits Pro and all these acronyms that probably don't mean much to you, but I realize there is a lot that has to go into these events. And I've always wondered, if I'm going to put together an insurance conference, and let's say it's an annual conference, and I'm looking at a location, talk to me about the things that might be in that RFP. Like, I want to understand that from your side of the fence. Yeah.
It's something that big, to be quite honest. You want to start it the day after
the other one is done.
Yeah,
okay.
You want to start it the next day. And there are many event planners that are smart that will get their RFPs out for multiple years. That allows you to lower your costs, because say for example, I send out an RFP for my next 5 or 6 conferences, or even 2 or 3. One hotel or conference center or convention center may say, hey, listen, you sent us your RFP for the next 3 years. If you give us all 3, we will lower the price to this.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Right, yeah. So oftentimes they'll keep it in the same place, or they may say, hey, no, you know what, this one moves around. That may depend on the industry. It may depend on the organization. It may depend on many, or just the planner preference. In addition to that, you may include not only where you want to go, but you're going to include the amount of room nights per night, your pattern typically that you would like. So say, for example, if the pattern is Monday through Thursday, well, in some cities, that's going to be more palatable than other cities.
Okay. So I didn't even think about that, the days of the week that you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I'm in Manhattan, where everything happens during the week, and on the weekend Manhattan is dead, well, that Monday through Thursday pattern is a lot more expensive.
Makes sense.
Than if I'm in Barbados.
Okay.
Then that Monday through Friday pattern is less expensive.
So you have to think about everything from the days of the week, how many years. I mean, like when we do RFPs in the insurance world, there are such things as rate guarantees that'll get you better pricing if you'll lock it in for 3 years. I totally understand that. What about kind of like the booking of the rooms and, discovering which space is most suitable for your needs? What are the things that you need to think about? Let's say I have 300 or 400 people that I plan on attending. Like, what are some of the things I need to think about as somebody putting together an event to look out for?
Absolutely. You also want to think about your peak regarding the sleeping rooms. So, for example, if I have 250 people on the Monday, but then because of the way my conference is set up, I only have 25 people sleeping at the hotel on Tuesday, the hotel's going to hate that.
Okay.
Because you are throwing off their pattern. And so you're going to have more hotels that will turn that business down because of that.
Interesting.
So so that's one thing you want to ensure. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but you want to ensure your peak is it's pretty stable.
I see. Well, and then like you usually, like if I'm somebody looking at this, I want a block of rooms, right? I assume I can, if I get 400 people in, I assume 200 people might want to stay on site or something like that. So I go to you helping with planning this event, and you're shopping the different hotels. Are you getting a certain percentage discount off of a block, or how does that usually work?
The sales manager will tell you are. But
you're not.
You're not. It's it's all going to depend on what you're looking at. So, for example, if you shop a certain piece of business to me regarding a conference, you bring it to me and you're like, hey, we are looking at your hotel. It's the only hotel that we're looking at in this area. But, we're also looking at a hotel in LA, and we're looking at a hotel in, so on and so, and
sure,
wherever the case may be. Well, I have to look and see how I stack up against those hotels and how I should go ahead and rate myself. So, for example, if I'm in Miami and you tell me that I'm going up against a hotel in, Tulsa, and then another one in, Winchester, Virginia, and then I'm like, okay, well, my destination, I believe, is more likable. It's something that I believe people are going to gravitate to more.
Yeah.
I can price a little bit higher, and they'll understand that this is Miami, and so
sure, I
can price a little higher. However, if I'm going up against, LA and Manhattan and Chicago, and it's in April or something like that, then I'm like, okay, well, any of those are desirable at that point.
Sure.
If it's February though, however, everybody's gonna,
we were just in Miami in February at the Biltmore, which I think you said
I'm jack that rate up.
Yeah, and it was. Literally, people were hanging by the pool. I'm like walking by in a sport coat coming between conference events, and I'm like, I see people lounging by the pool getting sun. I'm like, this is February. Like, what's going on? But that's part of the draw for Miami, obviously.
Absolutely.
What about kind of some of the behind the scenes stuff that you don't think about? We were talking food, buffet style versus, I think you said plated is what the terminology is. So I didn't even think about this, but the buffet actually could be potentially more expensive because people are coming back for second and third helpings, right?
Yep. Yeah, a lot more expensive because you can't control the consumption.
Yeah. There's no portion control, right?
Right. Yeah. And then a lot of that is going to go to waste as well. Whereas if it's plated, it's, hey, this is your plate. That's what you get. We know the cost. We can control the cost. And so you have to take all that into consideration. Another thing that, goodness, and then the thing that we haven't discussed in the conference and event space is COVID and how COVID affected the market.
Yeah, please. I'd like you to weigh in on that, because I know hospitality industry as a whole was one of the absolutely hardest hit, because you couldn't travel, right? And you couldn't stay anywhere. A lot of people had to be let go. So talk to me about what that experience was like, being somebody that's booking those types of locations, how devastating it might have been.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 87% of hospitality was laid off during COVID.
Jeez.
So yeah, you have a situation where, goodness, I know of some hotels where the general manager was washing the buses, the hotel like shuttle buses. The general manager was washing them because they didn't have anyone on staff. It would be him and maybe a couple housekeepers, and that's it on staff. So he was doing everything. So you had a situation like that, but then you also had this great reshuffling. So everybody that you knew, because everybody knows everyone in the industry. Hospitality is big, but it's small. So I would know people all over the world, and I would know, oh, hey, yeah, so-and-so's at this hotel, so-and-so's at that hotel, so-and-so works for this convention center. All of a sudden, those people aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
You had many that are in different industries. You have many that, once things picked back up, they ended up at different hotels or different convention and visitors bureaus. So all
Has
of a sudden,
the industry recovered, like, fully?
It seems so.
Okay.
It seems so. I think that there will always be a stigma. You have what ended up happening right after COVID was meeting planners were booking shorter term, so they wouldn't book as far out.
Okay.
Instead of booking 6 or 7 months out for an event, they would book 3 months out because just there was that uncertainty.
Yeah, I went to a conference a couple years, was it 2021, I believe, where we was in person and we were celebrating being back in person, but a lot of people still chose to attend virtually. Yeah. And they even did all of the speaking engagements, where typically you'd go and watch somebody on stage in the room speak. They were all on TVs, and it was like this weird kind of hybrid, and they did it just sort of as this very, I think it was a very much a precautionary measure.
Right.
It's like, just in case this thing gets canceled, we still have a virtual that we plan for.
Yep.
But it wasn't exactly what you expected when you went in person too, because they had to make this decision just to ensure that it didn't just get shut down altogether, right? Which I couldn't imagine having to weigh the potential for those things to happen right before an event too, and you lose all that money. So like, it's kind of recovering now. Has anything changed, like broadly you can say now, this is definitely different than it used to be in terms of planning? You mentioned a little bit of like how near term to the event itself, but what else maybe is like, now it's completely different than it used to be?
The virtual aspect, it was totally taken for granted prior to COVID. It was looked at as sort of, okay, yeah, you can attend virtually, but nobody ever really does. And, but now it's looked at as essential. You have many organizations that will have a virtual component for their events because they understand that it is needed now and it's a part of our world in meeting and events moving forward. You must have some sort of virtual component, whether that's with every event you do or you have your in-person events and then you have your virtual events separately.
Yeah.
Everyone now, virtual is more prevalent than it was previously.
Yeah, and that I'm still torn how I feel about all that, because I spend most of my days on Zoom, and software naturally is it lends to being able to sell over a virtual screen, right? Because I'm selling software that they're going to use on a screen, so like it works. But like the in-person, every time I have a conference, I'm literally like, yes, I get to go here, I get to go there, and I get to see so-and-so. I mean, I remember there's people that I've known for like 2 years through LinkedIn where we're chatting all the time, commenting on each other's posts, had calls, and then I finally meet them for the first time, and it's like an old friend, give them a big hug, and it's like there's something about that in-person. And I've been at events, and I'm sure you experienced this, where the event just goes so well and it's so much fun and everybody's talking about it afterwards. And I'm sure that's got to be rewarding from your standpoint to help put on something like that. That might be, something monumental in their lives or careers that they attended. So do you have any stories or something that you love, an event specifically that you can share, maybe a story about, a success story? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Goodness, when I was probably my favorite, and you'll actually like this, I was a huge part of bringing SoccerX to Miami for the first time.
Okay.
And I was connected very closely with SoccerX for years up until COVID. And we did the first event. It was at Marlins Park. So the big Marlins, big Marlins stadium down there, they booked it there. And there were so many things that were different challenges that were presenting themselves that would have stopped the event from taking place. But so SoccerX is a big soccer expo, so to speak. So anything that's that you could think of that's product based, that's brand new, that these companies want to showcase and they want to get in front of professional programs. So you had representatives from Ajax there, from Real Madrid, Manchester United. You had a Borussia Dortmund. Everyone you could think of, you had all of these representatives there to see these different tactics to see these different products. So for example, they had one that you'd love. They would set up a box, or it could be a box, an octagon, however, and the boxes had, or not boxes, but these.
Are you talking about the Dortmund one? I've seen Christian Pulisic in this, where it's like an octagon and they light up and you have to turn and it beeps and then you have to play the ball. I mean, that thing is sick looking.
Yes, that's what I'm talking. Yeah. So the first time I ever saw this was at SoccerX. I was like, oh my gosh, like I would have loved this growing up as a kid. That was there, and so you have these professional teams that go there, they see this, and then they would place bids on this.
Okay.
Another cool thing that I saw was on the jerseys, they would make it so that you would have QR codes built into the numbers on the back of the jersey. So when you would, say a player shoots, he misses, they show a close-up of him, and then he's turning, he's walking away, you could use your phone and then get the QR code, and it would take you right to the team's website where you could purchase his jersey.
Oh, wow.
And they were doing all types of things.
That's awesome stuff, man. So that would be a fun one. Do you have any that you could share, any horror stories, though, or like of things that went like totally wrong? Because it's always fun to hear those as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I'll just say this because I don't know if I can say anymore.
Yeah, protect the identities of those involved and all that stuff.
So this was a government group, high-profile government group. Still to this day, it was when I was working in D.C., a hotel that I worked at in D.C. Still to this day, they've never had a bigger February than they had that year because of this group. And I was so hungry to bring this group in. They were like, we need 120 meeting spaces, for 9 people each. And I was like, wait, why don't we just use the rooms as meeting spaces? We'll move in tables and do it that way. So we brought all this in, and we contracted this group. It was huge, $200,000 for this small hotel.
Okay.
It was mind blowing. Everybody was so excited about it. And then we quickly realized the head of IT was like, do we have the bandwidth to cover 120 laptops on our Wi-Fi right now? We were scrambling to figure that out. We ended up spending like $16,000 to upgrade the Wi-Fi in the building, but that wasn't until the second day. That's when we figured it out. So
was everybody complaining in day one?
Everybody was
Furious.
upset.
Yeah,
the Wi-Fi was terrible. I had to go. I got maybe about 50 bottles of wine to walk around, giving them out to those that were in charge just to smooth things over.
Did you guys have to refund any of the money on that?
No, thankfully we didn't. And thankfully, because it was day one, it didn't affect much. They were able to pick up from that and continue on. So that wasn't too bad. They didn't come back to the hotel again after that, but they did. They were happy with the result.
Well, and that's just that applies to any walk of life, right? There are going to be unforeseen issues, right? Part of what I'm presume you're paid for is solving in real time things like that happen. And that, again, that applies to my world and software, to insurance, to sports, you name it. And I think some of what we learned as athletes is the ability to solve problems in real time. Soccer's especially, everything is fluid.
Yep, absolutely.
There's no set plays really, except for maybe a few set pieces. And so everything you're solving in real time, and there's an issue, I'm tired, maybe I made a bad tackle and now I'm worried about getting another car. There's all these things that you solve for, and that's part of your role. And so that was funny that you were able to figure it out, and thank God it wasn't devastating. Last but not least, and let's move on to, I think, the last part of the podcast, which is a real passion of yours, which I'm anxious to hear about. But have you done anything in the insurance space? Have you done anything like a benefits conference or carriers? I'd love to hear maybe, because I want to hopefully we'll get you some attention after this opportunity. But what have you done in the insurance space?
Well, just partnered with different insurance meeting planners for their conferences.
Okay.
So just similar to the conference that you went at the Biltmore. Just to contract that and help them plan that, so to speak, which isn't very difficult. It isn't very different than many other conferences in the corporate space or even in the pharmaceutical space. Pharmaceutical is a little bit more tricky because of all the rules and regulations and red tape involved. But yeah, I mean, it seems like the conference that you went to is a pretty typical layout. Well,
I'd actually probably presume you're right? It was a corporate conference, right? There's a stage, there's keynote speakers, there's breakout rooms with other talk tracks. We're scheduled breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I imagine it was fairly routine for the Biltmore to put on, and it was a great conference. But I always wondered if our industry is anything special, and it's probably not when it comes to event planning, because it's really not probably that complicated in terms of the delivery for a hotel to be able to do it, right?
No, not to. But the one thing is, when they see insurance, they know you guys have money. So then
that's what I always wonder. Like, I feel like we have some of the biggest travel and expense budgets or T&E budgets. Our industry has money. There's no doubt about that. But why don't we move on to phase 3 of this, Neal? And I want to give you an opportunity to talk about a recent passion of yours, and that you've almost got me excited about it, and I know nothing about it. But you love Formula One, and you started an Instagram page around it. You're shooting your own content. But how the heck did you get into Formula One? Because I know it was a recent thing for you. This podcast is sponsored by PlanSite. PlanSite is a technology for employee benefits brokers to more efficiently manage their RFP process for any group size, all funding types, and over 20 benefit lines and point solutions. PlanSite is the only end-to-end RFP technology on the market today. Let's modernize your RFP process together. Check us out at plansite.com.
Yeah, so I mean, years ago, saw the movie Rush with Niki Lauda. Well, the character is Niki Lauda, who's obviously a real life person, God rest his soul, and then James Hunt, God rest his soul also. But the story was about their rivalry in the 70s as drivers, and it is a phenomenal story.
Who are the actors in that? Was that?
Oh, goodness.
Was that Matt Damon? Was that the one with Matt?
No, that's Ford versus Ferrari.
Okay.
But I'm forgetting the actor's
Don't worry about it. I was thinking
now.
that was the one I was trying to make the connection, but you're right. That was Ford versus Ferrari. Okay.
Yeah.
But you saw that movie, and was it just really good?
Saw that. The movie was phenomenal, and then it was just exciting. The teams coming together and building their own cars. It was unlike NASCAR where it's all the cars have to be the same, all the specifications have to be the same, everything's the same, but they have to build their own cars, and they're worried about making sure that they have a winning car. So it's not just having a great driver, it's having a winning car, a great team behind it also, great strategists, great pit crew, great team principal. It's not just about the driver, it becomes about the entire team itself.
Well, and you mentioned to me the movie, right? And then you said something recently while we were chatting beforehand called the Netflix effect. So yes. Netflix has a show, right, about Formula One. What's that show called?
Drive to Survive.
Drive to Survive. And this is funny. You told me you watched the first episode at like 10 a.m. and then binged the entire thing through like midnight that night. Just got hooked. So
got hooked
why
immediately.
is it that good of a show? Like I haven't seen it.
The show is phenomenal for a few reasons. Number one, Formula One, in addition to being a great sport, it is also a massive piece of drama.
Okay.
So think of what I believe, that the Housewives show for ladies would be like. Yeah. It's like that.
It's got that soap opera feel
Formula
a little
One.
bit. Okay.
Yeah, because so the teammates aren't the best of friends because that's your only barometer for success or failure, because at the end of the day, everybody's car is different. So right now, Mercedes, their car is third, I believe, heading into this season. If I compare, or a better example would be Max at Red Bull, world champion in a world champion car. I can't compare his results to Alex Albon at Williams, who is in a car that's been the worst car for the past 5 or 6 years. So I can't compare the results and say, well, Max is clearly better than Alex. I mean, he is, but but you can't, in that regard, say this is apples to apples, because one is in one of the greatest cars ever made, the other one is in an awful car. And so you only can really judge yourself against your teammate to where you know.
Okay,
where you
because
stand.
there's two.
Because you're driving
drivers?
the same car.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you got the intrigue, you got the bug from this show.
Yes.
But then is that what leads you in to go? All right, now I want to go actually watch the races, right?
So yeah, I watched watched the movie and I was like, okay, this is cool, and I would catch races from time to time. Then Drive to Survive came out and I was hooked. I immediately, after the last episode, the 10th episode, I researched everything that I could for another 2 or 3 hours that night. Then started watching. There was a race, I'll never forget, it was Hockenheim, 2019. That race was going to be taking place in 2 weeks. I watched that race, and that race was one of the most entertaining races in the last like 3 to 5 years. So it was just interesting that coincidentally happened then, because it was in Germany and in the pouring rain. And so many cars were sliding all over the place. So many cars didn't finish, and it was just extremely interesting. So then I started researching the technical aspect of it and getting interested in that as well. What's tire degradation? What does it mean when the tires fall off the cliff? What is the chassis? And what are rear diffusers? How does that work? What is downforce? When do I need high downforce versus low downforce? And learning all that, going down a rabbit hole with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like you go down the rabbit hole, because you told me like you kind of did that similar thing with World War II, and it sounds like once you get hooked on something, you go all in on it. But so I want to go back to the term, the Netflix effect that you mentioned to me off camera earlier. The Netflix effect, what does that mean? I want you to describe that for the people that don't understand that term.
Absolutely. So the Netflix effect is what they are calling this surge of fans, that it's what prompted this massive surge of millions of fans to gravitate to Formula One.
Okay.
So they go and they watch Drive to Survive on Netflix, and all of a sudden they're hooked. Drive to Survive enables you to not only learn the sport very quickly, within 10 hours of watching the show. So you learn the sport, but then not only that, the entire cast of characters, and you are completely caught up to speed.
Wow.
So it's the first time in history where a sport has brought on millions of fans, but almost overnight, but those fans don't know much about the sport.
So they're brand new, kind of like yourself, right? At the time, a couple years ago, you would have been brand new. Didn't you say like the Austin race or something doubled in size from a couple 100,000 to 400,000?
Yeah, it went from 110,000 in 2019 to 410,000 last year.
Whoa.
Yeah, in person.
And do you think a lot of that is attributable to that new fan base coming over from the show? It was a really popular show. I haven't watched it yet. I feel like I have to watch it now.
The vast majority. And Netflix knows it, everyone knows it. And something that I hadn't mentioned before. I mean, the U.S. will now be one of few countries that has 3 races.
Okay.
And so it's no surprise that they went to Miami, a very, sexy U.S. city with disposable income. And then their 3rd race in the U.S. is, surprise, surprise, Las Vegas, which has the 2nd largest disposable income on the planet.
Okay.
And then don't quote me on this, but I believe it's Singapore that's number 1.
Okay.
And when asked about it, Stefano Domenicali, the president of Formula One, he said, well, it has the most disposable income in the U.S.
Yeah, because you tell me it's a little bit more of a sophisticated sport than like what I traditionally would know with the NASCAR racing, right? Sure. Which is a little more blue collar, fun. It's not quite like the Rolexes, and you're saying like people are wearing blazers. Maybe I'd fit in the Formula One world.
You'd fit right in.
But so what is it? Do they intentionally make it feel like it's a little bit more of an aspirational kind of sport in the fan base itself?
It's always been that way.
Okay.
I mean, when the sport began, you had many drivers that what we call gentleman drivers. They were multimillionaires, and they were driving. They would pay for their own drive, so to speak, so that they could drive.
I see.
So today you have not all, but many come from wealthy backgrounds, or they're legacy kids where their parents were drivers. So Max Verstappen, who I mentioned, Jos Verstappen is his father. He was a driver. Carlos Sainz Jr. is a driver at Ferrari. His dad is Carlos Sainz Sr. He was a rally car driver. And then you have others who just come from wealthy families, like Lance Stroll. His dad is Lawrence Stroll. His dad owns the team he's on. His dad owns Aston Martin.
Well, naturally,
So his dad's a multi-billionaire. But then you have those rare,
like a Lewis Hamilton,
Hamilton that came from nothing.
Yeah,
and
tell
built
his story real
up.
quick, because it's such a cool story, and I'm sure a lot of people know it. But I'd love for you to recap it, because I heard you say it, and it drew me in when you told me about the history of how he got into racing.
There needs to be a movie done about him, because he got into karting when he got into RC driving when I believe he was 4, and he was beating grown men in competitive.
So the remote
RC
control
driving.
cars, yeah.
And somebody told his father, your kid has an eye for this sport. He has a talent for this sport. You need to have him develop. He then went on to karting, where he's driving a cart that's been handed down maybe 4 or 5 times, and that his dad's working on, and he is beating kids that have 2 or 3 mechanics for their carts.
When did you say dad was like 12, 14-hour days of work, and then coming home and working on the cart a few hours a day after that? And I mean, just the passion. What I love about that story is a father's sort of commitment to see his son succeed, right? And like
absolutely.
That sacrifice of time and effort and learning so that his son could benefit and maybe reach a certain level right beyond what he was able to provide, and all those things. That's such a universal human story too.
Absolutely.
And it's so cool that he's as good as he is. Is he one of the top, if not the top drivers? Where does he rank kind of overall?
Many people will argue who's better. He's the greatest driver of all time.
Oh, wow.
Of all time. He's a 7-time world champion. The only driver to match him at 7 is Michael Schumacher.
Okay.
Nobody else comes close.
He's a Mercedes guy, right?
He's Mercedes now. He was at McLaren. He's been at Mercedes the past 10 years. He was at McLaren before that.
Did he win with both cars, though?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, he won his first, and that's the other thing.
Yeah.
He won his first championship with McLaren in 2008. I think he was a sophomore in Formula One. Won his first championship then. Then the last 6 have been with Mercedes.
Okay.
And he has 103 race wins. The next closest is Michael Schumacher with 90, I believe.
Wow, and Lewis Hamilton's still relatively young, isn't he?
Yeah, he's 36. So I mean,
what's a career like? Is there a shelf life where the guys usually retire at a certain age?
So most guys will start to look up to retire around now. However, you have Fernando Alonso, who's phenomenal, and he is 41, I believe.
Okay,
he's still racing. He's at Aston Martin, and Lewis has shown no plans to retire. He's come out and said he has no plans on retiring. He still loves what he does. So the hope is that they will put together a car that is good enough for him to win with. It wasn't last year's car, and it doesn't look like it's going to be this year's car, given testing last week.
Yeah.
But once they do get a car good enough for him, I believe that we'll see him win at least one or two more.
Well, yeah, you kind of hope so with somebody that reached this level. The formula thing you were describing to that to me, which I think is interesting. Like every 7 years, there's a reset of a formula. So what is the formula, and how does that change the way these people build the cars and go about racing them for that segment of time?
Absolutely, absolutely. So usually it's every 7 years. This past formula was 8 years because of COVID.
Okay.
So they held off because many teams went through financial hardship due to COVID. However, now it's every 7 years. So we just entered a new formula last year. And so this new formula is created in a way where the cars can follow closer together. Oops, my apologies. But can follow closer together, because before what would happen is there's so much hot air coming off of these cars that one car chasing another would start to overheat because of the heat coming from the car in front. So now that air, the way the car is designed, goes up into the air.
Interesting.
So there's less what we call dirty air hitting the car directly behind.
So follow closer, probably more passing, I would presume.
More overtaking,
right?
absolutely.
More overtaking, okay. Yep. So this is what I didn't realize, right, is the sophistication of the actual science behind it and all the aerodynamics and these rule changes and how to adapt to the rule changes, which is, I guess, how you keep it continually interesting to watch, right?
Absolutely.
ClaimDoc is a medical claim auditing and member advocacy company. We provide fiduciary services to employer-sponsored benefit plans, and allowing them to create an environment where we ensure that the benefit plans are being charged in a fair and reasonable basis.
My business is basically people, and it become a real simple transition. We thought it was going to be far more complex. I've saved, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could not say enough about ClaimDoc.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking, there's over 10,000 sensors on these cars. And much of the technology in road cars comes from Formula One, the innovation from Formula One.
Makes sense,
Yeah, these cars are built from scratch in these facilities, and they will upgrade on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So they're thinking of something, they're designing it on a computer, they're printing it right out there, almost like it, or creating it right there, and then getting it on the car. And the beautiful thing is that they do it with so many things. When COVID first hit, Mercedes actually created breathing apparatuses for those that have trouble breathing from having COVID. So they were able to quickly pivot and create those devices and have those distributed.
Interesting. Yep. Well, so what about, do you think with the advent of like cars that drive themselves, like the Tesla, do you think we'll get to a point where Formula One is driverless?
No.
No, okay.
No. That driver element is everything.
Yeah.
The being able to figure out when to brake later and to get on the throttle earlier and how to manage a race. So one thing that we didn't touch on was DRS, the drag reduction system.
Okay.
And depending on a race, depending on the track, you could have 2 of them, you could have 3 of them, you could have 1 of them. And what that is you have a flap on your rear wing that opens up when you are within a second of the car ahead of you.
Okay.
And it gives you anywhere from, I think, like 16 to 30 extra horsepower, depending on the track. So to make overtaking easier, to create more opportunities to overtake. However, when things get really tricky, there was a race last year, I think it was last year in Jeddah. I've seen that was probably one of the best fights I've seen that included trying to get the advantage with DRS in quite some time, because you have Charles Leclerc battling Max Verstappen, and there's a certain line that you get to. And whoever hits that line first, the car behind them is the car that gets DRS if they're within a second of the car in front. So you had both of them looking at each other, jostling to see who could go fast but then still brake in time so that the other hit the line before them, so that way coming off of that, they would get DRS to attack the other driver.
You know, I'm just listening to you talk, man. I could see you sitting at a desk on Formula One's not halftime show, whatever the equivalent of the halftime show or the analysis show. We're here with Neal Carter. Neal's going to give us a rundown of the race, man. I'm just like watching you. It's like watching somebody that's an analyst at a soccer show or something. And it's funny how much you've been able to pick this up in such a short period of time. You're kind of getting me intrigued about the sport, just from listening to you talk. But is there anything that you would say, if I've never watched a Formula One race before, why would I turn it on when there's an upcoming race? What is it about it that you would say you got to watch it because of this?
There are so many things that can create uncertainty that you truly do not know what is going to happen.
Okay.
You can say, okay, hey, yeah, you know what? Max may win this race. He has the fastest car. He's the driver that's most on point right now. He's going to win this race. And then he loses it. Mm-hmm. And there are so many things to consider because these cars are created from scratch. You have, and there's weather as well. Then there's strategy. So, you know, touching on the different tire compounds, the fact that now this year there's 6 tire compounds. There's the C0 through the C5, the C5 being the softest, the C0 being the hardest. However, the Pirelli only gives you a choice of 3 per race, and that's hard, medium, soft. If you get the strategy wrong, well, then
you get the whole race wrong, right?
Right.
So there's just, because it's so complex, because there's so many variables, even things that are completely unforeseen, like it starts to rain, right? Yep. Or so-and-so's got a cold and he's feeling a little bit dreary today and he can't pay attention as well. There's so many things that can go right or wrong that nearly anything can happen, right? So like I look at NASCAR, and NASCAR is a little bit more simplistic, right? It's around an oval track, and you were saying like the cars are really similar in that regard versus the Formula One, there's a little bit more variable. You know, so there's just the intrigue, a little bit of the drama, but the fact that it's got anything is possible would draw you in. So if you want to turn on a race, what should I look for though? Like, what am I looking for? I know nothing about it. None of these technical things make any sense to me. What should I pay attention to the first race I ever watch?
Just the thing that I would say to just pay attention to are the pit strategies that each team chooses. So they get to decide what tires they start the race on. So for example, if I'm in like the race in Bahrain is in the desert. It's hot. However, it's a night race.
Okay.
So they have to decide, okay, they'll probably go medium to hard. However, will that work, or do I need to do 2 stops? Is 2 stops faster? At Bahrain, you lose 19 seconds in the pit stop, because when you enter the pit stop, you have 60 miles an hour. You pit's usually about anywhere 2.4 seconds to 3 seconds.
They can change 4 tires in that amount of time.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
It's so insane.
The Red Bull pit crew holds the world record, and it's like, I think 2.34 seconds.
To change 4 tires.
4 tires, yeah.
Insanity.
Yeah.
I can't. It takes me 2.4 hours to change one of my tires. I'm not very good at it. But so I get all that. Why don't we do this, Neal? Because this podcast will come out maybe 6 to 8 weeks from now.
For sure.
What's the upcoming race? I want to hear your prediction, and then when it comes out, we'll be able to tell whether or not you were able to predict accurately who wins.
Absolutely. So I'm very excited for this race because Bahrain is one of my favorite tracks.
Okay.
And one thing that I've noticed, and many have gone on to say, is that the track with elevation changes produce the best racing. And that seems to be true. That we see that in Interlagos in Brazil. We see that with Silverstone as well in England. My prediction is that Max Verstappen wins this race.
This is the Red Bull driver, correct?
Red Bull driver, yeah. That car you've taken a car created by Adrian Newey, who's one of the greatest car designers in Formula One history, and then which was the RB18 last year. Then they perfected it this year, the RB19. And one of the things that I'm going to be touching on my podcast is the fact that they are able to run, this is allegedly, they're able to run this car 10 millimeters lower to the ground, which creates more downforce, which means the car is faster.
How do they do that? Like, do you know, like, is there any speculation of how they're able to accomplish that? Yeah, how low it is?
So apparently they were able to make the floor stronger. And so by making the floor stronger, it won't break apart when they do hit any type of bumps or rivets in the road, because they can run it lower. So downforce is an effect that you're essentially, as the car is moving, the air is being pulled from out of it like a suction cup from under the car.
Bringing it down to the ground. So the downforce on the car. Yeah.
So scientifically, they say you can run a Formula One car upside down in a tunnel and it will stick to the ceiling.
I've heard that, which is bananas, but I mean, has anybody tried it? I don't know if you can't try it. All right, so let's go back. So prediction, what are the dates on the Bahrain race?
Sure. Dates, oh goodness, what's tomorrow? Tomorrow's the...
So 2nd?
Tomorrow's the 2nd, which means Friday is the 3rd.
Okay.
So the 3rd is when the weekend starts. That's practice. You have FP2.
Of March. I want to make sure, because I don't know if this will come out in May or so.
Yeah. So practice FP2 and FP3. Sorry, FP1 and FP2. Saturday is FP3, which is the 3rd practice session. Free practice is what FP stands for. And then you have qualifying after that. Qualifying determines your race order.
Okay.
So, fastest to slowest, that's the way you're going to start the race.
Yep.
The race is Sunday morning, which is, goodness, what's that,
5th?
March 5th?
Yeah, I think the 5th.
So March 5th, yeah. So here in Texas, it'll be March 5th.
Yes, all right. So Bahrain on March 5th, 2023. Neal Carter's prediction is Max
Verstappen win.
Verstappen. Okay, how do you say Verstappen?
Verstappen, yeah.
Verstappen, yeah, of the Red Bull car.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Anybody that's listening, we got to see if Neal was right. So closing thoughts. I know you have an Instagram channel. What is your Instagram handle so people can follow your content about Formula One?
Yeah, American Gearbox on all channels.
So YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. Okay, so American Gearbox. For those of you that love this portion of the podcast, definitely check out Neal's page. Any closing thoughts you want to leave the folks with before we jump?
Definitely, I would say check out Formula One. You'll fall in love with it. That's my biggest thing. I've been absolutely obsessed with it lately, and yeah, thank you for having me on.
And if anybody needs some event planning, find Neal on LinkedIn. We connected because we just live in the same locale and work out at the same gym. But it's been fun to get to know you, man. I feel like we're developing a little bit of friendship. Obviously, we got the soccer connection, 100%. And now you're about to get a podcast, hopefully stood up here soon. So we'll be podcast buddies as well. But thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you joining me on this episode.
Friend. Thank you, man.
All right, man.
We'll
talk soon.
So much.
Bye.